Hi, everybody. Well, it's January 16th, 2021, and here is the video of my sacred geometry talk that I did a couple months ago for our group. Finally getting to it. Bear with me, it's a first time out the gate, but I'm excited to share with you again the information regarding the uh, sacred geometry, especially in the context of the flower of life, which is how the information was given to me, or my first introduction to the information. And hopefully, this will bring those of you who didn't get to be a part of my talk last time up to date for what we're going to discuss next week. So let's begin. And I've got notes and cards to show you visuals, so we'll see how it goes. Okay. So, what is sacred geometry? Many teachings have described sacred geometry as the blueprint of creation and Genesis, the origin of all form. Sacred geometry is considered an ancient science that explores and explains the energy patterns that create and unify all things, and reveals the precise way that the energy of creation organizes itself. Now, what is the flower of life? We've talked a lot about that. So this is the flower of life pattern. Let's see if you can see that. There we go. The flower of life pattern holds all of sacred geometry. Here, that's a little bit better. Okay, like I told you, it's a first run. Keep in mind that this pattern is three-dimensional. This is what it looks like in 2D. So all matter is made up of sacred geometry manifested through the sacred geometrical proportions, no exception. That's all living things, all matter. Words, language, and emotions each have their own signature sine wave. You might remember Dr. Masaru Emoto, who studied the effects of emotions in human consciousness on the molecular structure of water and how the patterns of water changed depending upon what the emotions of the person that was focused on the water was feeling, whether it was love or anger. And again, they are all made up of different geometric patterns. So the flower of life, again, I'll show you the card. Here we go. The flower of life is made up of 19 circles within 2 circles or spheres, really. And the 6 circles that make up the center of that pattern there is what's called the seed of life pattern. And that's this pattern right here. And the evidence of those patterns go back to the first archaeological evidence of those patterns go back to the Essenes in 500 BC in the city of Masada, where it is found as the central motif in the church that is built there. Then later on, they found carvings, similar carvings of the Coptics and found in the Coptic church in ancient Egypt that dated back to 500 BC, but it was on a wall that was constructed in 6000 BC. The seed of life pattern can also be found on mosaic walls and floors in ancient Greek monasteries, and they were considered the order of Melchizedek. These patterns are also found in Turkey and many other Mediterranean countries, as well as Ireland, England, and France. They're also found all over Asia, in ancient temples in Tibet. In the Forbidden Palace in China, there are 2 lions that sit on either side of the emperor's throne. One is a female with a young cub next to her, and the other is a male lion with his paw resting on a 3D orb of the flower of life. The inscription on it says, quote, protecting all the knowledge of the universe. In Japan, the seed of life pattern and the flower of life is found in Shinto temples. And the design of Metatron's cube is found on the breastplates of the Shinto monks in their ceremonial costumes. And Da Vinci studied sacred geometry in great detail, and you might remember, everybody remembers this. There we go. This Da Vinci man within the circle. He was a Freemason, and all the ancient churches and temples had signatures of the Masons carved into the cornerstones. And those signatures and symbols all fit in to the flower of life pattern, as do all the zodiac symbols and the Viking rune symbols. You might go back to the video I asked you to watch before before the talk I did 2 months ago, or whenever it was, and you might want to also refer to the PDF printout that I sent you too, because we're going to discuss, we're going to review a little bit of what's discussed in that video and in my Flower of Life notes. So the story, or the idea of how creation began, started from the void. And out of the void came the Eye of Horus. There's the Eye of Horus right there. And the Eye of Horus appeared as spirit, and it sent its consciousness out, front and back, up and down, and side to side. And what that did was it created the octahedron, which all points on that octahedron touches the sphere. So if we think about this as the void, and the Eye of Horus comes from the center, and it moves up and down, side to side, and then front and back. So we're talking in 3-dimension here. When then, so that creates that circle. When the eye moves to the edge of the circle, it becomes the center of the next sphere. And then the next sphere is created, which then creates the Vestica Pisces. So as the Eye of Horus moved from the center of the circle, to the center of this circle, right? And then that becomes the center point for this circle, right? So you see how that pattern is created. And this is also how the cells divide, right? So as it divides, the center, this is also what they consider the connection to the Christ consciousness. And also you've seen this as a symbol, or certainly the symbol of the Vestica Pisces, which is this, the fish, right? The fish symbol here. You'll see that as also the symbol with the tail there, as the symbol of Jesus. So it goes through that process until the 6th time, which is where we now are back to the seed of life. And at this point, it moves in upon its axis. So if you're considering this as a 3-dimensional shape, it turns in on itself, and then it becomes the tube torus. So that's the energy of the tube torus. And then that process continues outward again for the next set of concentric circles that go around the center. So then it's going to go out again and then create the next set of concentric circles. And there you get to what's called the fruit of life. This pattern is the 13 spheres and is considered the holiest of symbols. This is also where all the details of reality are created, and this also connects with the 13 symbols, the 13 systems of knowledge. When you connect all the lines within the points of each of these spheres, you create Metatron's cube. Now, what is Metatron's cube? Metatron's cube is comprised of 13 equally sized circles, each of which have a line that comes out of the center and extends out to the centers of the other circles or spheres. There are actually 6 spheres on the interior part placed in the pattern of a hexagon, all around a single circle placed in the center. And you can see how that pattern in there. There are also 6 more spheres extending out along those same radial lines. So as you move from the center and then out to another set. Since there are 13 spheres in Metatron's cube, each of which have nodes or lines connecting to the other 12 spheres, the symbol in total contains 78 lines connecting inside of it. And what does that mean? It means that the 5 Platonic solids fit into this pattern here, Metatron's cube pattern. And these are the Platonic solids. The Platonic solids are the tetrahedron, the hexahedron or cube, the octahedron, the dodecahedron, and the icosahedron here. And the characteristics of all these Platonic solids are that what they all share is that all the edges of the shape are the same length, so they're all equilateral, and all the faces have equilateral triangles, and all points lie on the surface of the sphere. So this sacred symbol is named after the archangel Metatron, or Thoth in the Egyptian history or Egyptian myths. And his cube is said to be responsible for protecting and balancing the flow of energy through all things. The Metatron's cube, like the seed of life, can also be found within the flower of life. So we'll go back to Metatron's cube here. Is all contained within this symbol here. There we go. Metatron's cube also contains the 5 Platonic solids, and the 5 Platonic solids represent the 5 elements: earth, air, water, fire, and spirit. Metatron makes most of his appearances in the extremely old Jewish texts, focused on mysticism, as well as other occult writings. According to rabbinic tradition, Metatron was the highest angel. It is also said that Metatron served as a celestial scribe and that he wrote down God's words. He's said to be the keeper of the Akashic records. He's also said to be the one who greets us when we come into this earth plane and who greets us as we exit this earth plane. All engineers have learned the Platonic solids because they are the forms that determine all structure. So if you ever take an architectural class, you will learn about the Platonic solids. And for example, all crystals, because there's some 100,000 varieties of them, all have atoms that are arranged in different geometrical patterns that are functions of the Platonic solids. And interestingly, all viruses come from one of the 5 shapes of the Platonic solids. So, as in the microcosm, so in the macrocosm, scientists have studied that the relationship of all the planets, orbits, and the relationship to each other and the sun and their sizes contain the Platonic solids. So, how they're related to the elements is, for fire is the tetrahedron, for earth is the hexahedron, for air is the octahedron, which is interesting because that's the beginnings of it all, of spirit, is what the eye of Horus created, that geometric shape in the beginning of creation. Water is the icosahedron, and the dodecahedron is prana, life force, spirit, ether. And then, of course, is the sphere, which all creation comes from. So, this is considered the alchemical basis of creation itself. The icosahedron and the dodecahedron combine to make up the 2 strands of DNA. Actually, DNA strands do not just go off into space, but they turn back and wrap back around in on themselves to create the tube torus, or what they call the toroidal field. But the most important geometric shape that is contained in Metatron's cube is the star tetrahedron, which is also considered or called the Merkaba or Merkaba, depending on how you want to say it. Interestingly enough, there is not a definition in Webster's dictionary for this word. I thought that was quite interesting. The star tetrahedron are 2 interlocking tetrahedrons. One is upright and one is upside down. And this star tetrahedron will fit into a sphere. And it's the most important shape because it is the basis of all biological life forms. So everything has a Merkaba around it. We have one around our body. And as you can see, it's contained here in Metatron's cube, but you can see the man and the woman. And you can see how the shape around the woman has the triangle to the front, and with the man, the triangle or the shape is upright. So this is how it would be around the man as the triangle shape comes through here. But as you can see around the woman, it's the edge of the triangle or the tetrahedron that comes out in front of us as women. And this is an electromagnetic energy field. Each of the star tetrahedron is 1 hand length above our head. So 1 hand length above our head, which it's actually the thumb, and 1 hand length below our feet. So like this, and then below our feet. And then we have a prana tube, which is the size of your thumb and forefinger together. That's the size of the prana tube that runs through your body, through your spinal column, all the way from the top of our head down through our perineum and down through our perineum and down into the earth. So this tube is like an energetic axis that's running through our body, and this is what contains our chakras. We actually have 12 chakras in our body, and the 13th one is above our head. The energetic field of the star tetrahedron, when activated, is what is known as the Merkaba. And in ancient Egypt, it means Mer means light, Ka means spirit, and Ba means body. Its meaning is, quote, a light field that will take spirit and body from one world to another. In Hebrew, it means the throne of God, vehicle, or chariot. The Merkaba is the star tetrahedron inside of a sphere that, when activated, creates an energy force field around the body. When it's activated, which we will get to at some point, it creates a 55 to 60 foot diameter force field around us, which appears like a light spacecraft. So this is our personal spaceship. And the Flower of Life meditation teaches us to activate our own personal Merkaba by focusing the mind and the breath to create our own vehicle of ascension. It is said that the Merkaba, if you visualize the Merkaba around you, it is also your vehicle of protection. You are completely safe within your own Merkaba. So when we start to recognize these patterns and shapes, we start to see how it makes up our physical reality. It appears in mandalas, in crop circles, ancient earth monuments. There are mathematical components also to all of this. Consistent measurements of lines and curves are repeated through nature, and how the mathematics of the Fibonacci spiral and its mathematical sequence has been used in layouts of many temples and ancient sites, like the Great Pyramids of Egypt. The mathematical relationship between, for example, the standing stones in Karnak in France and the Himalayas have a mathematical relationship. And that information came through a book I read a couple years ago called Sacred Geometry of the Earth. And it's quite fascinating how everything is connected and related through sacred geometry. So with that said, I would like for us to just close our eyes, take a couple of deep breaths, and let's just visualize that Merkaba around us, our own personal Merkaba around our bodies. And if you have trouble visualizing, just know that it's there. It doesn't matter what your mind thinks. Just acknowledge and recognize that it's there. And know that with your Merkaba, you are completely safe and protected. Wherever you are, in whatever situation you are in, you can always activate that visualization. Activate the visualization of your own personal Merkaba around you. And know that you are safe and that you are protected within that electromagnetic energetic field. And now let's see that Merkaba around all our loved ones, around all our leaders, around our capital in Washington, D.C., and around our new leaders that are coming in, and all the people who are coming in to serve us in government. And know that they are safe and protected. And then expand that out, not just in America, but in all places on the planet, all places where humanity is struggling, all places where there's hate and violence. And know that that Merkaba is the Merkaba of protection, just as it is around our Mother Earth, that she is protected, that she can be healed just like we can be healed, and that all the darkness and chaos that we're seeing is just the last gasp of an old earth that no longer can exist as the new earth emerges. And then come back to your heart and know that the heart can heal everything, that love can heal everything, that light can heal everything. And let's just shine our light to all the places where the darkness lives with our compassionate and loving heart. Blessed be, and so it is. Amen. Well, I love you all. I hope this video will be helpful. I will be sending out more information shortly about the first steps of the Merkaba meditation and working on expanding this talk for Wednesday. In the meantime, let's all hold the energy of peace and love. And I'll look forward to seeing all of you next week. Love you all.